That one I actually made for her. And I just sat in my office. I thought, I need to tell Alexis this. So hey, shalom, shalom, it's your Dutch Uncle John. She knew who I was. I mean, she gets it. And I thought, well, how do I get it to her in Pennsylvania? I know, I'll maybe try to learn how to upload it to YouTube. And then I can just send her an email and say, check out this YouTube. And it turned out like 150,000. I don't even know if she ever watched it, but 150,000 other people have. And have invited me all over the world to talk about that and other stuff. So that's that.
So for ninth graders, this is optional for you. And if you want to do this with some sophomores, you can. But for sophomores, you're going to take, it is whatever appeals to you out of this. But you got to make about a 3-minute video on one of these things from today or tomorrow. And you can do this with groups up to 3. But that's what you need to take really good notes. Now, I'm recording it as well. And we'll have all that stuff that we'll go through on Wednesday. But you're going to make a 3-minute video, really great video. And we're going to send these to Dutch Uncle John next week. Sound good? Okay, so make sure you're taking notes in a way that you can come back to and and even include your own thoughts, what you think is cool, but you'll make a 3-minute video at the end of this week. Okay.
And what time is this one done?
This one's done at 36? Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay, well, we got to pick a topic, and this is the one I picked. By the way, you know what the temple is? In Jerusalem, there's no temple right now. God wanted a temple for him so he could reside. Before they got Jerusalem, the Jews, they were wandering in the wilderness, and they had the tabernacle. It was kind of a temporary structure that God lived in. You know, inside the tabernacle there was the menorah, and there was the showbread, and there was the Ark of the Covenant. You know the Ark of the Covenant, kind of. Yes. Okay. I don't know what they know, what they don't know, but that's what we ask. Okay. But God wanted a permanent house where he could live. And he wanted it in Jerusalem, up on the Temple Mount. All right? And King David, he was preparing to build it. But God would not let David build it. Is anyone familiar with that? God would not let David build it. Instead, David's son built it. Does anyone know why David was not allowed to build the temple? Okay, the answer is David had blood on his hands. God is a God of peace. He does not want somebody warring and bloody and all that. You understand? He doesn't need him to build the temple. His son, Solomon, Shalomo in Hebrew. What word do you hear in there? Shalom. I mean, Solomon's name means peace, right? Shlomo got to build the temple, not David. So, and how did David get blood on his hands? Does anybody remember this story? Excellent. Excellent. David's sitting on the roof one day of his house. He looks over, and there's Bathsheba. And Bathsheba is bathing on her roof or whatever she's doing. And he sends for Bathsheba. And Bathsheba comes over, and they have relations together. And it turns out Bathsheba was married. So there's a problem. David's the king, and he's a godly man, but he makes a mistake and sleeps with Bathsheba. And now her husband, his name is Uriah, he's off fighting for Israel. And David's got a problem. So he sends for Uriah. And they send to the front lines, they bring Uriah back, and David says, tell me, Uriah, how are things going on the front lines, on the fight? And Uriah said, it's going good, everything's good, King. And King David said, great. I tell you what, before you go back to the battle, why don't you go spend the weekend with your wife and then head back to battle? You hear David's plan, right? Get Uriah in there sleeping with his own wife, and then that should take care of it. What he didn't foresee is Uriah said, that wouldn't be right, David. I don't want to enjoy my home and my wife until all the soldiers can come back and we can all enjoy our families together. So if you don't mind, I won't go back to my wife now. Let me get back to the battle so we can win this and then everybody can enjoy. That's the last thing David wanted to hear. He needs Uriah in bed with Bathsheba to account for this child that's coming. So now David's in a pickle. David says, you know what? He calls his general and says, here, writes this note to the general, and he gives it to Uriah, seals it. Uriah, take this and give it to the general in the battle. So Uriah races back to the battle. The letter says, put Uriah on the front line. In other words, he's going to end up being killed, right? Because he's in the front line. And now Bathsheba is now no longer a wife. Now David can cover his sin. You understand the picture? It was a nasty thing David did. We all do nasty things. But God says, all right, you cannot build my temple because you have blood on your hands. Okay? That's the answer that most people give as to why David could not build the temple. Okay? But there's another reason. And we're going to look at it back here. This is back in Genesis 38. This is long before, this is Genesis. This is the beginning, right? David doesn't come until many years later. All right. So this is the story of Judah and Tamar. And this will take half an hour to tell this story. Very good story, too. Okay. Remember, Judah... Jacob, you know Abraham? Isaac. Abraham has Isaac, Isaac has Jacob. It's the big forefathers of Jews, right? Jacob ends up having 12 sons. The fourth one is Judah. That's the fourth son of Jacob. The Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus, I'm going to call him Yeshua, that's his Hebrew name. Yeshua, Jesus, the Messiah, is going to come through the line of Judah. It's prophesied that he's coming through Judah. Okay? So here's the story of Judah. And it came about at the time that Yehudah, that's Judah, departed from his brothers and visited a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira. And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua, and he took her and went into her. Okay, this is Judah getting married. So, Judah's wife conceived and bore a son, and he named him Then she conceived again and bore a son and named him Onan. She bore another son and named him Shelah. And it was at Chezib that she bore him. Okay, so we got Judah and Shua's daughter, and they got 3 boys. Good so far? Now, Judah, took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. Good? But Judah's firstborn, was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord took his life. Tamar now had widow, right? Young age. Then Yehudah said to Onan, go into your brother's wife and perform your duty as a brother-in-law to her and raise up offspring for your brother. Now that's a concept that we just don't understand in our Western culture. But in the Bible, it's called the law of Levirate marriage. And it's this. Here's first brother. And here's second brother. Be a bit younger. If this guy gets married and he dies before he has a child, his name is not going to continue in the history of Israel. Right? He was alive, he was a person, but he has no descendants in the history of Israel. Right? So what happens is, if this man dies without children, his younger brother is supposed to go in and sleep with his widow and bear him a child. Not 10 children, 1. Just so his name will not be erased from the history of Israel. And then anything that this man owned, it's passed on to his heirs, right? Any land, any possessions. Well, he has to have heirs for that to happen. And so it's the younger brother's job to sleep with his wife and bear an heir. Are we good on that?
Would it have to be a boy child then?
Yeah, halfway through that sentence when I was explaining that, I was wondering myself if it had to be a boy or a girl. What I think I've read is it has to be a child. So if it's a daughter, that's fine, because there's an example of that in the Bible someplace else. So he just needs an heir, okay? And that way his possessions will be passed on forever in Israel's history. Okay, so this is what verse 8 is talking about. Yehuda says to Onan, go into your brother's wife and perform your duty. Levir is Latin or Greek for brother. It's your brother's duty. Okay. Onan, second boy, knew that the offspring would not be his. So he went into his brother's wife, and he wasted his seed on the ground in order not to give offspring to his brother. We have a name for that. We won't say it here. But you understand? He didn't want to sleep with this woman. But what he did was displeasing in the sight of the Lord, so he took his life also. Now we got 2 sons of Judah. Judah only has 3 sons, and 2 of them are now dead. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, remain a widow. Here's the problem. Tamar, once you're a widow, nobody wants you anymore. You understand? She committed her life to Judah's family. It's not her fault the first son died, the second son died. But they died. And now what is she going to do? She can't go out and find another family to take her in. This family's already taken her in. This family has an obligation to her to provide her with an heir so that possessions can be passed and so she can be taken care of in her old age by her children. Okay? Judah said to the daughter-in-law Tamar, remain a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up. For he thought, I am afraid that he too may die like his brothers. So Tamar went and lived with her in her father's house. Remember, Judah has 3 sons. Here's the third one. This was Ur dies. He did evil. The next one was Onan. He dies. He did evil. This is the last son Judah has. Judah's an older man now. Judah can't be having more kids, right? And what does Judah think of Tamar? We'll make Tamar. Here's Tamar. This woman, she's like the kiss of death, right? You let your son marry this woman, dead. Does he want to give his last son to this woman? It's no fault of hers. She had nothing to do with it, you understand? And this third one, he's very young. So Judah says, Tamar, go back and live with your father. There's nowhere else for her to go. No other family will take her. You go live with your father, and when my third son grows up, I will give him to you. You got the picture? It's the Levirate marriage rule. Okay? So, what's she going to do? She goes and lives with her father. Now, after a considerable time, Shua's daughter, the wife of Judah, died. So Judah's wife dies. Okay? We don't know much about her. And when the time of mourning was ended, Judah went up to the sheep shearers at Timnah, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. And it was told to Tamar, Tamar's the widow, behold, your father is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. Now, she's a little bit ticked off because time has gone by. Shelah, the third son, he's grown up. And she's not getting any calls from Judah saying, okay, my third son is old enough now. She's just kind of left out there. Not fair to her, you understand? So, Tamar, she removes her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil. And she wrapped herself and sat in the gateway, which is on the road to Timnah, for she saw that Shelah had grown up, and she had not been given to him as wife. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot, a prostitute, for she had her face covered. Okay? She's going to deceive him with a garment. By the way, we got a minute. This is Genesis 38. You know what Genesis 37 is about? That's when Joseph gets thrown into the pit by his brothers, and then he gets sold off into Egypt. And what do the brothers do? They have to go back and tell Dad, oh, your son, remember what they did? They killed a goat, and they dipped Joseph's multicolored coat in the blood, and then took it back to the father and said, is this your son's coat? They deceived their father with a garment, didn't they? What's happening here? Tamar is deceiving her father-in-law with a garment. In the next chapter, 39, you have Joseph is in Egypt working in Potiphar's house, and Potiphar's wife says, Joseph, come sleep with me. And Joseph runs out, but she grabs his garment and says, Potiphar, look, your boy tried to rape me, and this is what he left. She's deceiving with a garment. There's 3 chapters in a row, deception by garment. I don't know why. I just know that they're there, and it gives me goosebumps to think, okay, there's God's put stuff in here like this. But I digress. Okay, so this is Yehuda. So he turned aside to her by the road and said, here now, let me come in to you. For he did not know that it was the daughter-in-law. It's been years, right? Tamar has changed. He's gotten older. Everybody's gotten older. Plus, she's covered her face. He has no idea that it's his daughter-in-law. And she said, well, what will you give me to come in? She's a prostitute. She wants paid. He said, therefore, I will send you a young goat from the flock. She said, well, what will you give me as a pledge until you send it? It's very easy to say, yes, tomorrow I'll send you a goat. Well, tomorrow, I need a goat now, And Judah's like, I just don't have one on me. And so she says, well, what can you give me to guarantee that you'll be back tomorrow with my goat? You understand her side of it, right? So he says, and she said, what pledge shall I give you? She said, your seal and your cord and your staff that is in your hand. So he gave them to her, and he went into her, and she conceived by him. She asked for 3 things. His seal, which would be the ring. That this is my seal. If I write something, I can stamp it on there. That's my seal. And a bracelet, or his cord, and his staff. Tomorrow you bring me the goat, I'll give you these 3 things back. Sounds good, right? By the way, if you had right now, you're the jury, do you think, who's guilty in this? Do you think she's wrong for dressing up like a prostitute and tricking him? Was that a bad thing she did? Or do you think he's at fault for not giving the 3rd son? Who would you put your money on as the bad guy? You understand somebody's doing wrong here someplace, okay? It turns out that Tamar is not considered a bad person in Jewish culture. She did what she is supposed to do. She is owed a child. And if this father-in-law is not going to do what he has to do, they do not look at Tamar as a bad person for dressing like a prostitute and tricking him. I'm not telling anybody here to dress like a prostitute and trick anybody. That's not the point. But Tamar is considered one of the noble women in Judaism. Does that make sense? She's not doing wrong by dressing like a prostitute. It was a noble thing she's doing to get what she was deserved, or what is deserved to her. Okay. When Yehuda, he sent the young goat by his friend to receive the pledge from the woman's hand, but he did not find her. He asked the men of the place, "Where is the temple prostitute who was by the road?" And they said, "There has been no temple prostitute here." This is the next day, right? He shows up with a goat, or he sends his servant with a goat, and there's no prostitute here. There's never a prostitute here. Okay, so now 3 months go by, and Judah is informed, your daughter-in-law Tamar has played the harlot. Isn't this a juicy story? Isn't it? It's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
She's 3 months pregnant, and he gets word, your daughter-in-law has played the harlot, and she is also with child by harlotry. Then Judah said, bring her out and let her be burned. This is great. This is self-righteousness, because he had no intention of giving that 3rd son to her. And all of a sudden she's pregnant, and he's all like, oh, how dare you? I was saving my 3rd son for you, and this is what you do. You go out and play the harlot and sleep with some stranger. Let's burn her. That's what he's suggesting. Let's burn her. He's about to get burned, isn't he? Okay. And it was while she was being brought out that she sent to her father-in-law and said, I am with child by the man who owns these 3 things. This staff, this ring, and this bracelet. Well, he recognizes those 3 things immediately, right? And she says, please examine and see whose ring and cords and staff are these. Judah recognized them instantly and said, she is more righteous than I, inasmuch as I did not give her to my son Shelah, and he did not have relations with her again. So Judah realizes all of a sudden, and that's why Judah is recognizing her as a righteous woman, to doing what she needs to do to get her. Yes? Yes, he did wrong. He did very wrong. In the story, that's how the Jews perceive it. She did not do wrong, because she is owed, according to the law, she's owed a child, okay? And he was doing wrong, so she had to kind of sneak around to get this. verse 26, Judah recognized them. Okay, this is where he said, she is more righteous than I. Okay. By the way, the name Yehuda, Judah, you recognize this name here? Yud, He, Vav, He. In your Bibles, anytime it says Lord, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, this word right here, L-O-R-D, that is God's name. His name, we say Yahweh, we say Yehovah. Some people say Jehovah. Okay? There's no J in Hebrew. It's kind of a Roman, they put the J's in. But this right here is God's name. It's a Yud, it's a He, it's a Vav, and it's a He. Yud, He, Vav, He. It's got a name, the Tetragrammaton. These four letters are powerful. This is not God's title. This is his name. He only has one name, you understand? God, that's his title. Or Elohim, that's his title. He has a name. Yahweh. Remember the Hebrew letters. Yud. Yud is a hand, right? Remember these letters? Yud. Okay. He was a little man with his hand up in the air. Like, behold, wow, something's going to be revealed. That's He. Vav, the Vav's picture is a nail. A nail or a hook. Nail. And then here's another He. Another little man with his hand in the air. He. Look at God's name if you break it down. That's hand. That's revelation. Something's revealed. That's nail. That's something's revealed. The hand reveals. The nail reveals. Who do you think that is? It's Jesus. Jesus is Yahweh. This is a picture of, we talk about the Trinity, Father, Son, and Spirit. Which one is God? They're all God. Sometimes he talks in plural pronouns. Sometimes he talks in singular pronouns. His name, that is describing the Son. But that's God's name. You see how it works? Okay. Now, knowing that, look at Yehuda's name. Yehuda is Yud, He, Vav, Dalet, He. It's Yahweh plus the letter Dalet. A Dalet, every picture, every letter has a picture. It means something. The Dalet is a door. So, Judah's name actually is saying the door to Yahweh is through Yehuda. And what did we say at the beginning? That the Messiah has to come through Judah, right? And in Judah's name, it actually is showing that Judah is the door to the Messiah. Okay? I'm not going to charge you for that one. Okay, 27. It came about at the time she was giving birth, and behold, there were twins in her womb. We're talking about Tamar. She had to have twins. Moreover, it took place while she was giving birth. One of them put out her hand, and the midwife tied a scarlet thread on it, saying, "This one come out first." But then he drew back the hand, and behold, his brother come out. Then she said, "What a breach you have made of yourself." So she named him Perez. Afterward, his brother came out who had the scarlet thread, and his name was Zerah. Okay? Now, remember, this all is taking place in Genesis 38. Hundreds of years before King David. Because remember how this whole talk started? King David, why couldn't King David build the temple? because he had blood on his hands. Okay? Now, let's see what cleverness God has put in this. Here's chapter 38 of Genesis. It's all in Hebrew. You can't read it. I can't either, so don't worry. Here's verse 9, 10, 11. I didn't put the whole chapter, but I put a bunch of them. Okay? When I do that, up here in verse 9, right here, that's Zion. And if I count 50 letters, 50 letters, I end up getting this, an ayin. And if I count 50 more letters, I end up getting this bait. Well, this letter, and this letter, which are all 50 letters apart, spell the word Boaz. Don't mean anything to you? Boaz, he's a guy who's going to show up hundreds of years in the future. Okay? He marries the woman Ruth. You know, there's the book of Ruth in the Bible, little 4 chapters. Okay? Boaz marries Ruth. Now, it turns out that's kind of clever that he's hidden the word Boaz 50 letters apart way back in this Genesis story, the Judah-Tamar story. Over here you have, that's a tav. If I count 50 letters, I get a vav. And if I count 50 more letters, I get a resh. Those 3 letters spell Ruth. Well, how clever. That Boaz and Ruth, who later are going to get married, I'm talking hundreds of years in the future. They're not born yet, right? In fact, this is the Torah. This is Genesis. This was written, signed, sealed, delivered. There it is, the Torah. And now it's hundreds of years later, Boaz and Ruth get married. But he has Boaz and Ruth's name hidden 50 letters apart way back in this story. If we continue down, verse 18, here you have a dalet. 50 letters, 50 letters later, you have a bait. And 50 letters later, you have an ayin. Boom, boom, boom. Those 3 spell Obed. Obed was the son of Boaz and Ruth. That's kind of clever. Why is he hiding all these names in a story hundreds of years earlier? If I come down even further, it's verse 25. Here's a yod. If I count 50 letters, I get a shin. And if I count 50 more letters, I get another yod. Yod, shin, yod is Ishai, which is Jesse in Hebrew. You know who Jesse is? That's Obed's son. He's hiding the genealogy 100 years in the future in this story where it all began. Does that make sense? And if I continue and start here, verse 26, there's a dalet. 50 letters is a vav. 50 letters is a dalet. There's David's name. Wow. David is Jesse's son. So you have Boaz and Ruth have Obed. Obed has Jesse. Jesse has David. And all their names are hidden 50 letters apart in this Judah and Tamar story. Okay? Well, let's go back to the New Testament. In the book of Matthew, first chapter, it gives the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah. The son of David, the son of Abraham. It says, Abraham is the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob. Jacob is the father of Judah and his brothers. We're good with that, right? Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar. We just talked about that, right? She has the twins. Perez came out first. Perez is the line. Okay? The line that goes to Messiah. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron the father of Ram. Ram the father of Amminadab. Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz by Rahab. Boaz was the father of Obed by Ruth. Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse is the father of David. David was the father of Solomon by Bathsheba, who had been the wife of Uriah. This is all tying it together, isn't it? You get this, don't you? You see what's happening. Okay? Now, ready for the big finish. Here's a verse in Deuteronomy. This is the law. The law is, there's 613 laws that God gave the Jews. You got to keep all 613 of these laws. Some of them are rather weird laws, like this one maybe. This one says, a bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to his 10th generation he shall not enter the congregation of the Lord. Wow. So, if I were born without a father, that makes me the bastard. I can't go into the temple, nor can my son, that's 2 generations, or his son, 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, up through 10 generations. None of my descendants can enter into the temple of the Lord. That's a pretty strict rule God's putting here, right? Now, why does that verse have anything to do with this? Well, look here. Judah was the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar. What do we know about Perez and Zerah? Their mother was Tamar. Their father was Judah, but were Judah and Tamar married? No. So that makes Perez a bastard. And Zerah too, right? So, Perez cannot enter into the congregation of the Lord. He cannot. He's a bastard. And his son, Hezron, that's the 2nd generation. He cannot enter. And Hezron was the father of Ram. Ram cannot enter the congregation. Ram, Aminadab. There's the 4th generation. Aminadab is the father of Nahshon. He cannot enter. Nahshon is the father of Salmon. There's the 6th generation. Salmon was the father of Boaz. Boaz cannot enter. Boaz was the father of Obed. That's the 8th generation. Obed is the father of Jesse. That's the 9th generation. Jesse is the father of David. David is the 10th generation of a bastard. David cannot enter into the congregation of the Lord. David's son, Solomon, he's number 11 in this line. And his name means peace. So, why can't David build the temple? There's 2 reasons. 1, he got blood on his hands. And 2, he's the 10th generation of a bastard. And God has a little law tucked in Deuteronomy that says, even to the 10th generation, a bastard cannot enter. You see how God fulfills his rules. They're his rules, and he fulfills them without us even realizing they're being fulfilled. Kind of cool, isn't it? Does this make sense? It's got a little sex and violence in it too, so we kind of spice it up.
Do you guys have any questions?
If you've seen the video, the first one I talked about, when the Jews teach their kids Hebrew, they give them honey on a piece of paper. And they teach them a letter, and the kids lick the honey off. So they were associating sweet, delicious with Hebrew. So I want you to do the same.
Tomorrow, we're just going to hear some kind of like random cool little facts. Like it just might be a few different words or whatever. So this was one big lesson. It had, little things that you could focus in on. But tomorrow we'll have like a bunch of mini lessons. So So make sure you bring that notebook back again. And then tonight, I did send that big message through Schoology on Friday. If you want to come to Moe's and have dinner, just make sure you RSVP, because I need to keep a count of how many will be there. Okay? So then we can just kind of chat and ask questions and all that
What a
stuff.
cheapskate. I'll give you a little penny can for it. Make sure you only get one. But I got all these. We'll eat the rest tomorrow. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How many is there? 5?
This should be my moment to stop this.
Thank you.